Deep in the heart of Montana's wilderness, where the nearest neighbor was miles away and cell service was a distant dream, Alex wasn't expecting anything extraordinary on that crisp autumn evening. He was just a regular guy who fixed cars for a living and spent his weekends in his grandfather's old cabin, trying to escape the chaos of city life. But fate had other plans when a blinding light tore through the peaceful night sky, followed by an earth-shaking crash that made his coffee mug rattle off the kitchen table. Most people would have called the authorities or at least posted about it on social media, but something in his gut told him to investigate. Armed with just a flashlight and his old hunting jacket, he tracked the trail of broken pine trees and disturbed earth. The sight that greeted him in the small clearing would forever change his life. A crashed vessel unlike anything human-made, its silver surface gleaming under the moonlight despite the damage. But it wasn't the ship that caught his attention. It was the sound. A soft whimper coming from beneath a section of twisted metal. That's when he saw her. At first glance, she looked almost human, except for the subtle shimmer of her pale blue skin and the intricate patterns that seemed to dance beneath its surface. She was trapped, injured, and clearly terrified. Without hesitation, Alex did what came naturally to him. He helped. Hours passed as he carefully freed her from the wreckage, treating her injuries with his limited first aid supplies, and somehow managing to communicate through gestures and expressions. He named her Nova, after the bright streak she'd made across the sky, and she seemed to accept it with a smile that literally glowed. As days turned into weeks, Nova recovered in his cabin, hidden from the world. She learned English with remarkable speed, though her accent had a musical quality that made even the simplest words sound like poetry. Alex found himself sharing everything about human life, from the simple joy of roasting marshmallows to the complexity of human emotions. In return, she taught him about the stars in ways that made astronomy books seem like children's tales. But they both knew this peaceful existence couldn't last forever. Nova's people would come looking for her, and Earth's authorities would eventually notice the crash site. Yet neither of them spoke about it, instead spending their days together as if time had frozen just for them. Alex showed her how to fix engines, and she showed him how to view the universe through different eyes. With each passing day, the way she looked at him changed, from gratitude to something deeper, something that made the stars themselves seem dim in comparison. What started as a simple act of kindness was becoming something more complex, something that crossed the boundaries of worlds and species. Their growing connection defied logic, but then again, so did her very presence on Earth. As autumn's chill deepened into winter's frost, Alex realized he was falling for someone who literally came from the stars. But their story was about to take another unexpected turn. One evening, as they sat watching the sunset from his porch, a familiar light appeared in the sky, different from the one that had brought Nova to Earth, but unmistakably from her world. The look in her eyes told him everything he needed to know. This wasn't just about them anymore. Their choices in the next few moments would affect not just their lives, but possibly the future of human-alien relations. As the light grew closer, Alex faced the biggest decision of his life. Would he help Nova return to her people, or would they find another way? The answer lay somewhere between his heart and the stars, in a place where love and duty collided like galaxies in the night sky. The approaching light cast long shadows across the snow-covered ground, and Alex felt Nova's hand tighten around his. Her skin's natural glow had dimmed, something he'd learned happened when she was afraid or worried. In the few months they'd spent together, he'd become fluent in reading these subtle changes in her appearance, just as she'd learned to read his human expressions. "They're not here to rescue me," Nova whispered, her voice carrying that melodic accent that had become so dear to him. "That's a scout ship. They're looking for something else." The fear in her voice made his heart race. She'd never fully explained why she'd crashed on Earth, always changing the subject when he'd asked about her mission or her people. Alex led her back inside the cabin, his mind racing through their options. The basement, originally built as a cold storage room by his grandfather, had proven useful for hiding Nova when the occasional hiker or forest ranger passed by, but something told him this situation required more than just hiding. As they hurried down the creaking wooden stairs, Nova finally began sharing the truth she'd been holding back. Her people, The Stellarians weren't just advanced, they were divided. One faction believed in peaceful exploration and cooperation with other species, while the other saw less advanced civilizations as resources to be exploited. Nova had been part of a mission to protect Earth from the latter group, but her ship had been sabotaged. "The device they're looking for," she explained, pulling a small crystal from a hidden compartment in her suit that Alex had never noticed before, "contains coordinates to every inhabited world in this sector of the galaxy. If the wrong faction gets it," she didn't need to finish the sentence. Alex understood the implications. Earth wouldn't just be facing a few scout ships. The crystal pulsed with a soft blue light that matched Nova's natural glow. As she held it, the basement walls seemed to fade away, replaced by fleeting images of distant worlds and star systems. Alex watched in awe as entire civilizations flickered before his eyes, each one potentially facing the same threat as Earth. Above them, the cabin's windows rattled as the scout ship passed overhead. Nova quickly closed her hand around the crystal, plunging them back into the basement's dim light. "I have to destroy it," she said, her voice breaking. "But if I do, I'll lose my way home. The coordinates in this crystal are the only reason I can ever find my way back to my people, the good ones who sent me here." Alex's heart felt like it was being torn in two directions. The selfless part of him knew they had to destroy the crystal to protect Earth and countless other worlds. But the part that had fallen in love with Nova couldn't bear the thought of her being stranded here forever, forced to hide for the rest of her life. The sound of engines grew louder overhead, and strange lights began to filter through the basement's small window. They were running out of time. Nova looked at Alex with those otherworldly eyes that had first captured his heart, tears making them shimmer like distant stars. "We have to choose," she whispered. But before either of them could move, a new sound cut through the night. Multiple engines, different from the first. The floor above them creaked with heavy footsteps. Nova's patterns flared with a warning red glow as she grabbed Alex's arm. "They're not alone," she breathed, "and they're not going to stop until they find what they're looking for." In that moment, trapped in his grandfather's old basement with advanced aliens searching above them, Alex realized their story had become much bigger than just a human and an alien falling in love. They were now standing at the crossroads of Earth's future, with only seconds to decide which path to take. The footsteps above grew closer, accompanied by the hum of advanced scanning devices. Alex's mind raced back to his years of exploring these woods. There had to be a way out. That's when he remembered the old mining tunnel his grandfather had once shown him, connecting the basement to an exit nearly half a mile away. They'd sealed it off years ago, but right now, it was their only hope. Nova's patterns pulsed rapidly as Alex led her to the false wall behind his grandfather's old workbench. The crystal in her hand cast an ethereal blue glow as they worked together to silently move the heavy shelving unit. The footsteps were now directly above them, and dust fell from the ceiling with each heavy step. "They're using quantum trackers," Nova whispered, her voice barely audible. "The crystal's energy signature will lead them straight to us." She was right. Even as they pulled the rotting wooden panels away from the tunnel entrance, they could hear the aliens' devices beeping more frantically. They had minutes, maybe seconds. The tunnel was smaller than Alex remembered, and years of neglect had left it dangerously unstable. As they crawled through the narrow passage, Nova suddenly stopped, her patterns shifting to a deep purple, a color Alex had never seen before. "Alex," she said, turning to face him in the cramped space, "if we destroy the crystal now, its energy release will mask our escape." But she hesitated, her glow dimming. The tunnel might not survive the surge. Above them, the basement door splintered with a crash. Their pursuers were no longer trying to be subtle. Alex could hear them speaking in a language that sounded like crystalline chimes, but their aggressive tone needed no translation. They were running out of options. Nova pressed the crystal into his hands, and for a moment, Alex was overwhelmed by visions of her homeworld. Crystal spires reaching into pink skies, cities that floated among the clouds, and the faces of those she'd left behind. He understood now why returning meant so much to her. But as he looked into her eyes, he saw something else too. A fear not for herself, but for him, for Earth, and for all the other worlds that crystal could endanger. The tunnel creaked ominously as more dust and small rocks fell around them. Through the gaps in the aging support beams, Alex could see strange lights scanning the basement they'd just fled. The aliens were getting closer, their footsteps sending vibrations through the entire structure. Nova's hand covered his, both of them now holding the crystal. In that touch, Alex felt all the unspoken words between them, the love that had grown in stolen moments, the secrets they'd shared, and the impossible choice they now faced. The crystal pulsed faster, almost like a heartbeat, as if it knew what they were considering. A beam of light pierced through a crack in the tunnel wall, missing them by inches. The aliens were using some kind of advanced scanning technology that could see through solid matter. Soon, they'd be discovered. The crystal grew warmer in their joined hands, its pulse synchronizing with their racing hearts. "Whatever we decide," Nova whispered, her pattern swirling with colors Alex had never seen before, "we decide together." The tunnel groaned again, louder this time, as heavy footsteps approached from both directions. They were trapped, and in a few moments, they would have to make a choice that would affect not just their lives, but the fate of countless worlds. The crystal flared brightly, illuminating their faces in its otherworldly glow, as the sound of alien weapons charging filled the narrow space. Time seemed to freeze as Alex and Nova looked at each other one last time, their decision hanging in the balance between heartbeats. Just as Alex and Nova braced for the inevitable, a deafening explosion rocked the tunnel, but it wasn't from the crystal. Through the settling dust, a new light source emerged, different from both the aliens' scanners and Nova's natural glow. A section of the tunnel wall had been breached, revealing a hidden passage they hadn't known existed. "This way, quickly," called out a voice that sounded eerily similar to Nova's musical accent. From the new opening emerged another Stellarian, her skin a deeper shade of blue than Nova's, with patterns that spiraled in complex geometries. Nova's eyes widened in recognition. "Sister?" she gasped, her patterns flashing with shock and disbelief. The newcomer, Nova's sister Lyra, gestured urgently toward the passage. "The Resistance sent me. We've been tracking you since your crash, but we couldn't risk making contact until now." Another explosion shook the tunnel, this time from their pursuers' weapons. They had no choice but to trust Lyra and dive into the new passage. As they crawled through the tight space, Lyra explained between breaths that the situation was far more complex than either Alex or Nova had realized. The crystal wasn't just a star map. It was a key to an ancient network of portals, scattered across the galaxy. In the wrong hands, it could allow instant invasion of any world it contained coordinates for. "But that's not the worst part," Lyra added as they emerged into what appeared to be an old military bunker Alex had never known existed beneath his grandfather's property. "The crystal is counting down. If it isn't stabilized within the next few minutes, it will release enough energy to tear a hole in space-time. They didn't just sabotage your ship, Nova. They weaponized the crystal itself." The bunker was filled with a mixture of Earth technology and obviously alien equipment. Alex's mind reeled as he realized his grandfather must have been involved in something far bigger than he'd ever imagined. Photos on the wall showed his grandfather standing with what appeared to be Stellarians, dated decades before Alex was born. "Your grandfather was part of the Resistance," Lyra explained, noting Alex's shocked expression. "He helped establish a network of safe houses across Earth for our agents. But now that network has been compromised." The crystal in Nova's hand pulsed faster, its glow taking on a dangerous red tinge. Nova's patterns shifted to colors Alex had never seen as she processed this revelation. "So destroying it isn't an option," she said, her voice tight with tension. "But we can't let them have it either." Above them, the sound of multiple ships landing shook dust from the bunker's ceiling. Lyra rushed to an ancient-looking console, her patterns moving in complex sequences as her hands flew over the controls. "There's a third option," she said, "but it requires a sacrifice." She looked directly at Alex, her expression grave. "The crystal can be stabilized, but it needs a human consciousness to anchor it. Your grandfather helped design the failsafe, Alex. That's why this bunker is here." Nova immediately stepped between Alex and her sister, her patterns flaring protectively. "No," she said firmly, but Alex could see the fear in her eyes. The crystal's pulsing had become almost painful now, and the bunker walls groaned under the pressure of whatever was happening above. Lyra's expression softened. "It wouldn't kill him, sister, but he would be changed. The consciousness merger would make him like us, a bridge between our peoples. That's what the enemy fears most, true union between humans and Stellarians." The crystal suddenly flared bright enough to illuminate the entire bunker, and Alex felt a strange pulling sensation, as if it was calling to him. Nova's hand found his, and in that touch, he felt all her fear, love, and hope. They had seconds to decide, but now the choice was his alone to make. The bunker's entrance exploded inward, and through the smoke, multiple sets of glowing eyes appeared. Time seemed to slow as Alex looked between Nova, the crystal, and the approaching threat, knowing his next action would change everything, not just for them, but for both their worlds. The crystal's energy surged through Alex's body the moment his decision was made. As his hand closed firmly around it, accepting its power, Nova cried out, not in fear, but in awe. The crystal's light merged with his very being, and for a brief moment he understood everything, the true nature of the universe, the countless civilizations scattered across the stars, and most importantly, why his grandfather had spent his life preparing for this exact moment. The hostile Stellarians burst through the smoke, their weapons charged, but they froze at the sight before them. Alex was floating several inches off the ground, his skin beginning to shimmer with patterns similar to Nova's, but in colors that had never been seen before on any world. The crystal wasn't just changing him. It was fulfilling a prophecy that both sides of the Stellarian civilization had feared and anticipated for generations. "The first bridge," whispered one of the enemy Stellarians, lowering his weapon. Even Lyra seemed shocked, her patterns pulsing with disbelief. The prophecy spoke of a human who would willingly accept the merge, becoming neither human nor Stellarian, but something entirely new. As the transformation continued, Alex's consciousness expanded. He could see the network of portals scattered across the galaxy, but more than that, he could feel the connections between all living beings. The crystal wasn't just a key or a weapon, it was a test, waiting for someone who would choose to use its power not for control, but for understanding. Nova moved to his side, her patterns synchronizing with his new ones. The hostile Stellarians dropped to their knees, their own patterns shifting from aggressive reds to peaceful blues. Through their shared connection, Alex could feel their change of heart. They weren't evil, just afraid of a universe they couldn't control. But just as victory seemed certain, the bunker's system started flashing red. Lyra rushed to the console, her patterns flaring with alarm. "The transformation is causing a quantum cascade," she shouted. "The entire facility will collapse in minutes." The prophecy had mentioned this too, that the bridge would need to make one final choice. Alex, still floating, looked at Nova with eyes that now held galaxies in them. "I understand now," he said, his voice carrying echoes of stellar winds. "Your people created the crystal not to find other worlds, but to find me, and now I know what I have to do with that power." Nova's patterns swirled with sudden understanding and fear. "But you'll have to leave," she whispered, tears floating upward in the crystal's energy field. Alex smiled, reaching out to touch her face with his now shimmering hand. The facility's collapse began, chunks of ceiling crashing down around them. But before anyone could move, Alex raised his hands, and reality itself seemed to bend. The crystal's power flowed through him, no longer a destructive force but a creative one. The bunker's walls began to crystallize, transforming into something that looked like a blend of human architecture and Stellarian technology. "I'm not leaving," Alex said, his voice resonating with power and love. "I'm transforming this place, all of this mountain, into Earth's first embassy to the stars, a place where humans and Stellarians can meet openly, learn from each other, and grow together." The hostile Stellarians rose, their patterns now showing acceptance and hope. But there was a price for this miracle. As the transformation completed, Alex felt himself changing in ways he hadn't expected. He would remain on Earth, remain with Nova, but he would never be fully human again. He had become something new, a living bridge between worlds. As the dust settled in their new crystalline sanctuary, Nova took his hand, her patterns merging with his in a dance of love and acceptance. "You know," she said with a smile that lit up like a supernova, "when I crashed on Earth, I thought I was just running from something. I never dreamed I was running toward humanity's greatest step into the stars." The crystal, now a part of Alex, pulsed one final time before fading into his chest, leaving behind a soft glow that matched Nova's. Through its power, he had not only saved Earth from invasion, but had opened the door to humanity's greatest adventure. And he would face that adventure with Nova by his side, their love bridging the gap between the stars themselves. Years have passed since that transformative night in the bunker, and the mountain that once held Alex's grandfather's cabin has become a beacon of hope for both humanity and the Stellarians. The crystalline embassy, now known as Starbridge Summit, glimmers with an otherworldly light that can be seen for miles, though most locals simply assume it's a New Age retreat or a fancy resort. Alex and Nova work together as ambassadors between the worlds, their unique bond serving as living proof that love truly knows no boundaries, not even those of different species or solar systems. Alex's transformation has stabilized into something beautiful, his skin now sharing a subtle shimmer with Nova's, though his remains distinctly human in nature. They've learned to dance between both worlds, spending their mornings helping humans understand the vastness of the universe and their evenings teaching young Stellarians about the unique beauty of Earth's simplest pleasures. Lyra became the head of security for the embassy, her initial mission of resistance evolving into one of protection and unity. The hostile Stellarians who witnessed Alex's transformation became the strongest advocates for human-Stellarian cooperation, their stories spreading across the galaxy and inspiring others to choose understanding over fear. In a quiet corner of the embassy, Alex maintained a small memorial to his grandfather. The old photos of him with the Stellarians were now displayed proudly, along with his journal detailing decades of preparation for the moment when humanity would be ready for this step into a larger universe. He knew, Nova would often say, her patterns glowing with warm colors whenever they visited the memorial. He knew love would be the bridge, not technology. The crystal's power, now permanently bonded with Alex, continued to evolve. Rather than just bridging worlds, it helped bridge understanding. Visitors to the embassy often found themselves experiencing flashes of insight into the universal emotions that connected all sentient beings: love, hope, fear, joy. These shared experiences did more to foster peace than any treaty could have achieved. One evening, as Alex and Nova stood on their favorite observation deck, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors that reminded them both of their first meeting, a young human girl and a Stellarian child played together nearby, their laughter echoing through the crystalline halls. The children's patterns, for the human girl had developed her own subtle shimmer through prolonged exposure to the embassy's energy, danced in perfect harmony. "You know," Alex said, his voice carrying the warmth of someone who had found their true purpose, "when I first helped you out of that crashed ship, I never imagined we'd end up creating all of this." He gestured to the embassy around them, where humans and Stellarians moved freely, sharing knowledge, culture, and friendship. Nova's patterns swirled with joy as she leaned against him. "That's because you were too busy falling in love with an alien," she teased, her musical accent still making his heart skip a beat after all these years. "Though I suppose I was just as guilty of falling for a human." As the last rays of sunlight filtered through the crystal walls, casting rainbow patterns across the embassy floors, Alex reflected on how a simple act of kindness had changed not just his life, but the course of human history. The stars above were no longer distant points of light, but bridges to new friendships, new understanding, and new possibilities. "Ready for tomorrow's delegation?" Nova asked, her patterns showing excitement for the upcoming first official visit from a new alien species that had reached out after hearing Earth's story. Alex smiled, the subtle glow of the crystal in his chest pulsing in sync with his heart. "Ready as always," he replied, taking her hand. After all, love was just the beginning of humanity's greatest adventure. And as night fell over Starbridge Summit, the embassy's lights twinkled like stars brought down to Earth. a beacon of hope reminding everyone who saw it that in the vast expanse of space, the strongest force wasn't gravity or nuclear power. It was love, bridging the gap between worlds, one heart at a time.